For all the latest reviews, interviews, and everything entertainment in Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam, and Telugu, subscribe to Film Companion South now.
Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Manikandan's superb film Kadaisi Vivasayi. Now, Manikandan has made a lot of films that we have enjoyed, like Kakamuttai and especially Andavan Kattale, which is one of my favorite films. But the Manikandan we see here is not that man. He is not that mainstream entertainer. This is not to say that Kadaisi Vivasayi is not a mainstream entertainer. It is. And yet it isn't. Usually a mainstream film tries to make you laugh, it tries to make you cry, it tries to give you a message. Kadaisi Vivasayi tries to make you one with the universe. Or at least it tries to make us one with this earth, the soil that we share with crows and ants and elephants and peacocks and a 90-year-old farmer named Mayandi. He is the Kadaisi Vivasayi of the title. Now, there's a very obvious and literal reason for this title. Everybody around Mayandi, they've sold their lands, they are now doing other things, and Mayandi is literally the last farmer, the Kadaisi Vivasayi, who takes his cattle to the field and plows the field. But there is a less obvious reason for the title, and at least to me it seemed that Mayandi and people like him are the last of a kind. They are a dying kind, the Kadaisi of a kind. Now, during a temple festival, in the preparations for it, people want a mud horse. Now, where do they go? To the local potter. And that man is the last remaining potter in that village. And when he does his magic with his potter's wheel, when he makes that mud statue, they look on as if somebody's performing magic. Now, Mayandi too is a kind of magician. He's a kind of a shaman with plants. Look at his very name, Mayandi. It means great caring god. And in this very earth-set, earth-bound, soil-bound movie, God, the heavenly God, is a huge presence, but I'll come to that later. But for now, let's just say that Mayandi is the kind of man who, even while he's buying punnaka for his cattle, he takes a bite of that cake and he tries to see what it's like, because he knows at once what its quality is by tasting it. And second thing is, he knows that he wants to feed the best possible punnaka to his cattle. He cares about his cattle. He cares about each living plant, because each plant is a living life. And the big irony of the film is that this man who believes that even a plant is alive, he gets caught for killing a few living creatures, and he ends up in a very bizarre and surreal court case which forms the rest of the film. Now, in a way, this sounds like a Manikandan film, right? You would expect the earlier Manikandan to make this film, but here he is operating at a completely different level. Now, usually the emotions in a film, they come from the story, they come from the characters. Here they come from a higher plane. It's almost like there's something spiritual in this movie. And it's almost as if the plot does not matter. Now, let me explain. The screenplay works as it should, as in for about 45 to 50 minutes, it sets up the world that we are going to enter, and then we get the inciting incident, which is the thing that Mayandi does, which results in the court case later, and then the rest of the movie we follow the results of what's happening after this court case. But here's the difference with this screenplay. Instead of taking us from one event to another event, it takes us from one big thought or metaphor to another big thought or metaphor, to the third big thought or metaphor, to the fourth big thought or metaphor, and so on and so forth. Now, take the moment where Mayandi is in jail and is looking at the trees outside the jail. The walls of the jail are so high that he can see only the tops of the trees. Now, in another movie, we would see Mayandi weep. We might see him fall at the feet of his lawyer. We might see him protest against the arrest. But here he does none of those things. Despite the fact that he is the protagonist, he is almost the acted upon. He is not the actor, but the acted upon. He is led from one incident to another incident thanks to local politics. And that's why I said that the story almost seems to be progressing on its own without the need for external forces or people to kind of shape it a particular way. Take the other beautiful scene where we discover that Mayandi is illiterate, right? Because he uses ink on his thumb. Look at where exactly in the screenplay this is placed. It is beautiful, and it makes us look back at the irony, at the knowledge this man possesses despite his lack of bookish knowledge. Or take the Vijay Sethupathi character. Now, he is a devotee of Lord Muruga, which is why an important event in the movie takes place around peacocks. Like Mayandi, he also has a god's name, Ramaya. But is Ramaya a man or a metaphor? He wears a number of watches all the way up his arm, and all of those watches are broken. In other words, he is timeless. Earthly time has no meaning for him. And in his most beautiful scene, it looks like another magician's trick because he always carries two bags around with him, and they are his earthly emotional baggage. And there comes a point when he doesn't need that anymore, and when he can escape that baggage and, like I said earlier, become one with the universe. Now, this Ramaya character, or this Vijay Sethupathi character, he has another exquisite scene with a sadhu who eats only discarded food from a dustbin, that is yacha food. And he asks that man something, and the reply that he gets is so profound, and the scene is so spiritual that you almost forget the fact that the actual scene has very little to do with the actual plot. Now, Mayandi is hard of hearing. This may be another metaphor in the sense that just like the Ramaya character does not have any need for earthly time, Mayandi has no need for earthly conversations of the people around him because they are nothing like him. The local god has no human shape. Again, it sounds like a metaphor, or at least it makes you think of something beyond the core plot of the film. Even the running joke about the bald man and his attempts to grow hair makes a point about how we always focus on the deficiencies in our lives rather than looking at the positives, because at the other end we have a girl again with a physical deficiency. She's a dwarf, she's a little person, and she seems to be perfectly content with her life and wisecracking her way through life. Even Yogi Babu, who handles an elephant in this movie, he is used as a philosophical figure. Now imagine that. There is a lot of gentle comedy, the kind you expect in a Manikandan film, especially in the scenes where other people are asked to take care of Mayandi's land. But none of this is loud, and all of this is organically woven into the narrative. Now, even the serious points are sometimes presented like comedy, or take the point of how healthy Mayandi is for his age, or the fact that he has no power in his house and therefore he has no fans, etc. Now, this is a very strong commentary about our consumerist lives today, but it plays like comedy. That's the beauty of it. Kadaisi Vivasayi is a brilliant example about how to talk about important things without making them seem like boring lectures. It talks about things like organic farming, it talks about GMO crops, it talks about pesticides, it talks about murders in the name of land. But the way these are woven into the screenplay are not in the form of lectures, they are in the form of conversations. And sometimes they are even woven into throwaway lines or jokes, like the terrific joke that Mayandi makes about seedless tomatoes. Even the scene where a jailed man learns how to grow a plant has an element of absurdism in it, in the sense that this is so simple. All that a plant needs is soil, sunlight, water. How can we not know this? How could we have forgotten this? In fact, the film itself is a plea to bring back the ancient farming knowledge that we are slowly losing, but Manikandan is not hitting us over the head, and he's saying, this is important to me, but if your priorities are different, then that's okay. That is the best way to make a message movie. The last stretch, let me say without any spoilers that this is the only part of the movie that did not fully work for me. It felt more mainstream than the rest of the film, but I can also understand the idealism behind these scenes. The sight of a peacock finally, spreading its feathers and dancing is such a sign of hope that I can see why these scenes were thought necessary. Let's talk a bit about the acting. Vijay Sethupathi has a very small role, but he's superb. He brings dimensions to the character that I have never seen play out on his face on screen before. I like the actress Rachel Rebecca who plays the judge. She brings out perfectly how one can see somebody as innocent and yet is bound by laws and rules created so that we have to kind of follow the due procedure and not just release them because they seem to be doing the right thing. Now, the old man, whose name is Nallandi, he's a perfect fit. Now, I would not call him a good actor in the technical sense, but that is exactly why he is so good in this movie. He really makes you see a man who's out of his element the same way that a brand new actor might be in front of a camera. His odd rhythms of speech, his lack of hearing, his gesturing, everything works brilliantly. Like Mayandi, Manikandan's cinematography is one with the earth, one with the soil. The only pretty shots are those of the heavens, of the sun, of the moon, of the clouds. Otherwise, when he's on earth, he uses a palette that seems to have been bleached out by a merciless sun. Even the scene that I mentioned earlier about Mayandi being in jail and looking at trees, it could have been a very beautiful shot. Instead, we get a very beautiful emotion. But Manikandan refuses to sentimentalize the story. There is no Ayyo Pavam business. We feel the film because Manikandan makes the emotions build slowly and naturally, and they enter us like the air we breathe. We don't have 100 violins wailing in the background. This is a film with utmost dignity. You find this dignity in the staging. This dignity is also there in the exquisite background score by Santosh Narayanan and Richard Harvey. Manikandan uses the score minimally. This shows how much confidence he has in his material, and it also shows the confidence that he has in his own talent as a director. The very first time we hear music in the film is when Mayandi returns home after a long day of work and relaxes. We hear a beautiful passage of acoustic guitar. And it's not as if the music is not distinct or we can't hear it, because there are points where I thought I heard something that sounded like a pan flute. There is this famous song, right? Karpane Endralum, Karchile Endralum, written by Wali. That's there. But what I'm trying to say is that the only time we hear a bigness in the score is when the scene itself is big or the emotion itself is big and deserves it. Like in that bit between the Sadhu and Ramaya. In other words, the score does not manipulate us. It either underlines the bigger theme of the film or the smaller emotion in a particular scene. Kadaisi Vivasayi is a beautiful film, and it is open to a lot of readings and interpretations, and I'm sure that all of you will take away something from it. But this is what I took away. There is a point where Mayandi said it is because of his land, his Nilam. He has a reason to get up in the morning. Otherwise, what will he do? Why should he get up in the morning? And this impacted me very profoundly because it locks into something I keep thinking about a lot in real life, which is purpose. And what is the purpose of Mayandi's life? It is to grow more life. It is to beget more life. Can you get a more beautiful summation of existence than that? So that's it for this exquisite film, Kadaisi Vivasayi. If you like this video, do subscribe to Film Companion South, and I'll see you soon at the movies.